Hi, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. This week's garden tour, we are looking at the peak of the garden still here in the summer, but it is the end of the peak. So we are nearing the end of August and everything is still producing, excuse me, everything is producing still really well. However, some plants are in decline and I am thinking now about what's coming out in order to make room for fall stuff that I've already got started inside. I've only got one basket with me today because I actually was out here the last couple of days harvesting, so there shouldn't be too much I have to grab. Although I say that, and every time I come out here without a basket, I always wish I brought a basket. So I always like to start in the same place over here on the right side of the garden. This is my tomato trellis, and I have right now some pole beans intermixed with my tomatoes. These are blue cocoa pole beans. You can see they've got these beautiful purple stems, these absolutely lovely purple flowers, and they make purple beans. This one not quite ready, maybe ready by tomorrow. If you've been following me, you know that I had a lot of noodle beans, and as the noodle beans are petering out, or more, I'm actually allowing them to peter out, I think they would actually continue producing a lot of beans for this whole entire summer season if I was able to keep up with harvesting. I had planted these pole beans probably like a month ago now, and I planted them late in the season specifically because I was expecting the noodle beans to kind of peter out and I wanted to have something else coming in to sort of take on that production. And it turns out it's not really necessary, but I do kind of like having the option of allowing the noodle beans to go to seed, basically make dried beans, while I have fresh beans coming from over here. Because noodle beans, because they're so long, you'll see, they produce so many beans per pod, and I'm finding that it's actually one of the most efficient ways I've ever seen to harvest dried beans for storage. One time I tried to grow black beans and I didn't understand how many bean pods I would need in order to have like an actual serving of beans, and with the noodle beans it's just so much easier because of, like I said, how many beans you actually end up getting per pod and how easy they are to grow. They're just so prolific. Back to the tomatoes though. I pulled a bunch of tomatoes like I said the past couple of days, so most of the stuff on here is green, and the plants are looking pretty great. You will notice there is some damage here and some of these branches are going crispy, and stuff like that is kind of normal for tomatoes. If your tomatoes look like this by the end of the season, it's not something you did wrong, it's just kind of how it tends to go with tomatoes. And I am at the point where I've stopped trying to prune them. I mean, I'll do little stuff like take off the little suckers that I see, but if I miss a big sucker like this and it starts putting on fruit, I'm like, whatever, it can grow its fruit. Sometimes I'll come through and thin out places where it gets really dense, like this probably needs to be thinned out a little bit, but mostly I know that these tomatoes don't have a lot of time left, and I'm willing to let them go a little wild in order to get a little extra production out of them. Something really interesting down here though, I have a little baby tomato plant. This is a cutting from a tomato plant off of a friend's farm. She's growing a variety called tomato tree. It's supposed to get like 25 feet tall and be really cool, so it'd be nice if I could get at least 1 or 2 fruits off of this, save some seeds, and then start this with everything next year and try out this new variety. Last week, I think it was, you guys saw me put this little bag over these flowers, and you can actually see there's a little baby fruit forming in there. And so if I just wanted this one, I would take the bag off, but I see a few other flowers in here, and just to pollinate them, I've just been tapping them. Tomato flowers are self-pollinating, so everything they need is all in that flower. So I can just do this to make sure that the pollen falls where it needs to fall. And once these are all setting fruit, I'll remove the bag and put like maybe a little twisty tie or some little tag here to remind myself this is the branch that I protected. And when these seeds come in, I will know for sure that they aren't crossed with anything else that I'm growing right here. And these are San Marzano that I'm saving. And I think specifically I want to have my production go a little heavier on San Marzano next year. They are a little smaller than the Amish paste, but I've noticed they're a bit healthier. And as far as cracking goes, they are not nearly as susceptible to cracking as something like the Amish paste, which you can see makes much larger tomatoes. These are actually fasciated, so they're not supposed to be quite this big. But these ones crack a lot more, and often I will see some that have cracks like all the way down the side, deep in the flesh. And that is not super ideal for me given the uneven watering that I've got going on. And so I think the San Marzanos are going to be a better choice for me, at least in the short term. Someday I do want to have like a high tunnel and enough space to grow a whole bunch of tomatoes and protect them from the rain and have a whole irrigation system and things like that, so that I don't have to worry so much about things like cracking. But in a home garden where you don't have a lot of infrastructure to either protect things from the rain and put in, like I said, entire irrigation systems, then selecting for varieties that aren't as susceptible to cracking can be beneficial. If you've been here for a while, you know I also like doing experimental plants and seeing what happens. This is an onion that went to seed, and I left it in the ground just to see what would happen. And the onion itself doesn't look super great for eating. Like, some of it definitely does, but this over here is getting a little mushy. And the stalk has gone completely brittle and crispy and hollow. It dropped its seeds, and now it is just kind of here. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to split the bulb and grow again next year, like bulbing things do. But I think it's important to watch the life cycles of your plants, even past what you would normally look at as far as production, because it can really help you understand the holistic view of how that plant is growing and operating in the world, and sort of just like its needs as a plant in general. Coming back to the front of the row here, I cannot walk through here anymore. I have allowed the tomatoes to intermix with the peppers, and there are bean vines going across here. So I go around these days. I will meet you on the other side, but oh, look at this. These, I think this one is probably ready to pull. Look at that. This is a sweet pepper. I think it's variety Etudier. I'll have to put that on the screen because I always mispronounce it. But these have been really great. They're a little small, but very nice, cute little bell peppers. On the other side of the pepper jungle now, I can't quite get in here to get stuff unless I really need to. I'll put on my long sleeves and my pants and my tennis shoes and kind of crawl in there and get fruit when I can see that it's ripe. But otherwise I kind of just let this part be wild and own the garden. Looking at some of the other peppers here, a lot of these are making flowers for their second flush. You can see right in here we've got flowers forming. Now a lot of these plants were very diseased. You can see they're still not totally healthy, but they continue to push through and actually continue making healthy leaves at the top. And I think I'm gonna get some production off of these, although there were a couple in here I actually took out because they got so stunted that I felt like it was more important for me to have the walkway here to get around the jungle than to have these little stunted plants struggling to produce one more pepper each. Look at how beautiful this lemon basil is. This is all one plant that I have pruned over and over to, oh, I almost fell, to double its production. You can see every time you cut any basil, you can cut the center stalk and 2 come up in its place. And so this thing has been doubling every time I harvest it, which is a little overwhelming. But this is a beautiful, tasty basil, and pretty prolific too. I tried lemon basil and lime basil, and the lemon basil grows so much better than the lime. I can barely get the lime to germinate, much less create healthy plants for me. But the lemon basil does quite well here. And it smells intoxicating. Oh, look at this. This is a sweet potato vine that came all the way from somewhere over here. Last year I had pumpkin vines doing this. This year I guess it's sweet potatoes that take over the garden. Let's take a look at these beautiful fish pepper plants. My eggplants. Ooh, that's an eggplant. My eggplants are kind of choking it out a little bit, but it's still looking absolutely gorgeous. I haven't gotten just a whole ton of peppers off of these plants this year. Last year they were super prolific, but hopefully, oh yeah, there's one. This one's almost ready. Hopefully they will put on a second flush. I can see all these cute little flowers coming on. They'll probably be much more prolific in their second flush because they were kind of struggling with the disease when they were a little smaller. I just can't believe like how beautiful this is. It's almost an entirely white pepper plant at this point, except for the leaves that are variegated, and they all look gorgeous. I'm definitely going to have to protect some of these blossoms and save some seeds from this year, because these were my very last seeds that I planted this year. Down this way we've also got another jungle forming. This is right here, one of my Tabasco plants. I do make my own sauce, and well, you can see kind of some turning orange in there. So these will be ready to pick pretty soon. And then down here I have banana pinos, which, oh, I can actually see some on there right now. They're hard to see on camera because they're green. But this variety is very interesting. It is a cross between a banana pepper and a jalapeno that I got from the Experimental Farm Network. And last year these were some of my absolute favorite peppers. And it's also interesting to note that they don't really seem to be very affected by the disease that is coming into all of my other peppers. They might be resistant, which would be really ideal actually. So I'm definitely going to have to save some of these seeds as well. And peppers are the same as tomatoes. You can just cover them like you saw and wait for them to self-pollinate. You might have to tap on them to help them out. And once they've pollinated and set the fruit, you can safely remove your cover and allow those fruits to develop and know that that is going to be a genetically pure fruit and not a cross. All right, we're gonna come down the other side of the jungle row now where the corn is. My corn is getting really close actually to being ready to pick. Usually with corn, what you're looking for is for this to be all dried out. That means that the kernels are ready. And I could probably eat this fresh right now, but I'm actually trying to save this for popcorn. I'll probably pull a couple, eat them fresh, and just check out the quality. But I do want these to kind of dry out a little bit before I pick them so that I can use them for popcorn. Something else really, really interesting, if we come all the way down to this last corn. Whoop. All right, you see this? This is corn smut. It's a fungus that infects corn, and it is actually edible and supposedly a delicacy. I'm not sure if I've caught it in time for it to be like in the edible stage, but I'm gonna grab it and try and just kind of see what it's like, because it's supposed to be really tasty in like Mexican food. I've got this small patch of ginger in here between two sections of corn, and it's getting so big I almost don't notice that it's not corn. I mean, it's obviously not corn, but like it sort of blends in with everything, and it's looking super healthy. I'm very excited to dig up this ginger at the end of the season and see what sort of production I've got. This is the only remaining nasturtium in the garden now, and it is doing it all for all of them. I don't think I would need more than one if they're going to get to be this size. I'm so happy every time I look at it. I think it's just one of the most gorgeous plants. And like I've said, even though it is edible, I don't normally eat it, but just the fact that it is edible and also so beautiful is a bonus. Speaking of edible flowers, I have heard over and over that squash blossoms are edible. And so the other day I pulled some and stuffed them with cheese and fried them up. And I gotta say, I think they're overhyped. Like, everything about them, like the recipe that went into it, was super delicious, but I don't feel like it being stuffed inside this flower really added anything other than just like a sense of novelty to it. I think the entire thing would be better with like a roasted pepper that got stuffed and fried instead of one of these flowers. As I keep moving forward, you can see I have not done anything about my impromptu turnip patch. And this continues to intrigue me because root vegetables, especially like turnips, are supposed to go to seed in the heat. And these got reseeded at the beginning of spring just because I didn't clean up the last ones that had gone to seed. And they're producing beautiful turnips that are not going to seed. And it has been a hot summer here. So this is just so incredibly interesting. I'm going to pull this one for you guys to see. I've been trying to slowly go through them, but like, oh my goodness, I am so happy with this turnip. It is beautiful. I know they're not bitter because I've been eating them, and they're supposed to be bitter in the heat. So I don't know if it's the variety or just the way they got planted in the heat and never got cold. This variety, by the way, is White Lady turnip. And I do have to kind of clear this out because it is time to plant the fall root vegetables in this area. But it's just so interesting. It just really goes to show that you don't have to follow the rules of gardening. Like they're more like loose guidelines than anything else because plants are going to do what they want. All right, we are back up at the front now and looking at these beautiful trellises. These pumpkins that I have here have still not set any fruit. They haven't even made female flowers. So that's quite disappointing. And I'm not sure just how much control I have over that at this point. Continuing to make sure they get enough water. But beyond that, I'm not really sure. And I do have a pest here. It is this, here it is. This like fuzzy yellow thing. That is eating the leaves, and it is not great, but it is not killing the plant the way that squash bugs would, and so I need to kind of figure out what I can do to attract more predators for this. Actually, there's this idea that I've had. My friend Krista, which you have seen on garden tours before and on the channel, has talked to me about getting a bat box, and I think that that would be actually absolutely stellar because bats are such great predators for a whole bunch of insects. And I think the stat was they can eat like 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour, something crazy like that. Something like that living near here would be probably pretty ideal for keeping down not just the mosquitoes but a whole bunch of other pests that are in the garden and might actually make a dent in sort of balancing the ecosystem more towards what I want it to be naturally. But there's a lot to learn about bat boxes, and I've only just begun kind of exploring the idea. So I'm not going to be teaching about that so much as just kind of showing you what I do and exploring the idea as I go. This little guy, ooh, he's not supposed to be here. I'm not sure if that is an immature squash bug or something else, but it's weird that he is on the noodle beans instead of the squash, which, oh my goodness, look at these noodle beans. I swear I've pulled so many off and they're still coming in so strong. You can't even tell. I've been waiting for them to get to this stage right here where they just start drying out, and I'll pull them, bring them inside, maybe let them dry out a little bit more and pop the beans out. I've already got maybe like half a cup of dried beans off of these, and as you can see, plenty more still coming in. And what's really nice about these is actually because they're so prolific, this is a baby right here coming in. I could continue harvesting them at the edible stage, which would be like, I don't know, a couple days after this, a couple days older than this one. Or I can continue letting them get big and make these dried beans. It's so multi-purpose, and I just can't recommend it highly enough. This is a Chinese red noodle bean, and it is one of my favorite plants in the entire garden. I will definitely include some of these home-saved beans in the seed giveaway if I do that again this winter. And then back behind this trellis is the potato patch, which is finally starting to die back. So these potatoes are very, very close. I pulled a plant up the other day from the corner, and the potatoes are still a little small. So I think they've got maybe like a week or two to go. You can always tell with potatoes when they start really dying back. And I'm going to keep checking as we go, but this is very close to being cleared out. And once it is, this will be a great spot to start direct sowing some carrots maybe. I'm going to try again with carrots. We'll see how it goes. And turnips and rutabagas. I mean, I've got plenty of turnips, but so maybe I'll focus on rutabagas and carrots over the winter. And it's also starting to be time for me to think about where I'm gonna put my baby big brassicas, like my broccolis and cauliflowers and Brussels sprouts and all of that. I've got like a whole tray of Brussels sprout plants that I started, I guess, a month and a half ago now. So they're looking pretty big and healthy, ready to be transplanted out. And I don't have the room right now. They're still small, like I could stick them in between stuff, but it just feels like not quite yet the right time. And I can't really explain exactly how I know that. It just feels like it's a little too early. Like the existing plants that I would be planting them between are still too big and vigorous, and I don't know. It just feels like not quite yet the right time. And I'm still feeling it out. This is only my second year growing in this particular spot, so I am trying to feel out the weather and just everything. But I think maybe in the next month or so you'll see me plant those out. Look at these beauties. I am pretty sure I saw a monarch visit these flowers the other day. I couldn't get a good enough picture to like, oh, that actually does look like a squash bug. Uh-oh. I'll have to keep an eye out for their eggs. I'm pretty sure I saw a monarch visit these flowers the other day. It'd be really cool if that was true. Everything along here has been doing really well. It is mostly shaded by this tree, so it has been a little slower than the rest of the garden, but everything looks super healthy. And all of these little Malawi / Peppadew peppers are looking real close to turning, so that is very exciting. They are so cute. Look at them. These candy cane zinnias just keep going, keep being lovely. And I forgot to show you guys, in my mess of weeds here on the right side of the garden, I do have something that is supposed to be here. This is a bee balm plant, and it is finally doing the thing where it produces these cute little flowers. I think this should be perennial in my area, so hopefully I will have bee balm here at the corner of the garden going forward. Just taking a quick look at the raised bed. I actually topped it off with some homemade compost the other day. It's only mostly broken down, which is kind of what I wanted for this area. I didn't want to dig off the mulch and put the compost under it and then try and put all that mulch back. So mostly this broken down stuff should sort of kind of float to the top as it continues to rain, and the more fine particles should kind of work their way down to create sort of a new half broken down mulchy layer on the top. That's the idea anyway. We'll see how well that works out in practice. Right, and then before I go, just a quick look at the berry patch. The blackberries and raspberries look pretty happy. The blueberries are okay. Some of you guys have tried to give me advice about fixing the pH here, and I don't know if I will be able to do it because, like I mentioned in the video I was talking about pH, I have clay under here, and clay is actually a really good buffer. So it would take a lot of whatever I put to actually affect the pH here. And I don't know if affecting the pH of just this top layer of compost would really do the job long term. So this one actually looks pretty great, honestly. If they keep looking okay, I might just leave them here and see if they do okay. If they don't, some of you mentioned I do have the option of digging them out and putting them somewhere else or keeping them in pots. So I'll keep that in mind. And they might just be a little slower growing. So that's something also to consider. But this one honestly looks pretty healthy. My strawberry also looks great. If you remember, it was entirely eaten down by a deer, and now you can't even tell. This is one strawberry plant here that has put out runners both this direction and this direction. And if it's done this much in a year, I mean, imagine next year when all of these are settled and are putting out tendrils going down. I think my ground cover is coming together. Alright guys, well that wraps up the garden tour for today. I hope you learned something, and if you're new here, I do this every single Wednesday, so you can check back next week, or you can also visit one of these playlists to catch up on garden tours from last year and from earlier this year. If you really like my content, then liking and subscribing really does make a difference, so if you haven't done that already, I really encourage you to do that. And then if you really like my content and you have the financial means to support me in that way, I do have a Patreon link below. You can visit that and tip me for each video that I make, and you can also get some really cool merch. One of my friends is designing stickers that currently are exclusive only to patrons, so you're going to want to check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening!